Dr. Walid, for this nice introduction. And it's a pleasure for me to give you a presentation regarding vitrification, which I try to, well, okay. So the outline of my presentation, I will start briefly with the basic principle of vitrification. And I would say that vitrification is a very huge subject. So I selected 4 topics, I would say, that are subject of a lot of debates. One regarding the strategy of embryo selection, blastocyst selection. One regarding the collapsing of the blastocell cavity. Then which stress to the oocyte have to endure during a vitrification process. And then finally, the huge debate about the open and closed system to vitrified embryos or oocytes. So let's go back in the year 80s and 90s. At that time, cryopreservation was performed using the slow freezing techniques. And the results were at that time very disappointed. So that the indications to vitrify, to cryopreserve blastocyst or oocyte were very, very low. And I would say that we cryopreserve blastocyst or oocytes because we had at that time no other alternatives. For example, in case of supernumerary embryo, in case of hyperstimulation to avoid risk of hyperstimulation, and also cancel of fresh embryo transfer for medical reasons. And oocyte with slow freezing was applied also mainly for fertility preservation. But then, since the year 2000, there was a huge increase in the cryopreservation process because vitrification was introduced. And we observed directly an increase in the results. And nowadays, with the implementation of the vitrification technique, cryopreservations of oocytes and embryo is a fundamental, integral, and indispensable part of infertility treatment or fertility preservation. And we can see briefly that the vitrification increased the number of indications for blastocyst and also for oocytes. So with the success of vitrification, give us some words why vitrification. Let's go first. We know that the major component of the cell is water, and water is the major actor involved in the process of cryopreservation. Now, for the most of the people, when you have a water and that you cool this water, what will happen? They tell you the water will crystallize. And crystal inside the cell as direct consequence that the cell will degenerate because when crystal will occur inside the cell, the volume will increase and the membrane will explode. As indirect consequence of ice crystal, we observed also a rising in the solute concentration, and we call this the osmotic damage solution effect. So the control of foci of nucleation and ice crystal formation are key factors that determine the viability of cells following the cooling and warming process. And one of the pioneers of what we call vitrification is Dr. Luyet, that crystallization is incompatible with living system and should be avoided whenever possible. So when we cool water, we have to avoid formation of crystal. And in the year 1980, that means it's not so long ago, some groups could obtain by extremely fast cooling they could vitrify drops of water. And you can see that the water, when you cool below the glass transition temperature, around minus 137 degrees, water take the state of glassy state. So the vitrification is solidification of a liquid by an extreme increase in viscosity, or the transformation of a solute due to an increase in viscosity during the cooling steps. That means this extreme elevation of viscosity during the cooling results ultimately in a liquid that has the same lack of internal motion as a crystalline solid, but yet lacks the molecular rearrangement of crystallization that are responsible for cell injury and damage. So when we have a vitreous, glassy, or amorphous state, we have no molecular rearrangement. You can see in the definition that the name viscosity occurred several times, and we can increase the viscosity during the cooling process by addition of cryoprotectants and also by dehydration, what we call the cell clouding effect. The effect of cryoprotectant are to increase the viscosity, and we have permeable cryoprotectant like the DMSO, ethylene glycol, propanediol, glycerol also, and non-permeable cryoprotectant, sucrose or trehalose. And the cryoprotectant has the capacity to bind to water. So if they bind to water, they reduce the velocity of the molecule of water, and so you can increase the viscosity. Also, we change the phase diagram. That means that delay the crystal appearance of formation. What means the phase diagram? You can see this diagram here. Voila. This was for pure water, only one line. But no, if I had in my solution of water, I had cryoprotectant. What will happen? You can see that you observe a dynamic process of the temperature, the melting temperature, and the glass transition temperature according to the concentration of cryoprotectant. And you can observe that there is a transit zone between the melting temperature and the glass transition temperature where ice crystal appeared. So that you have to avoid, when you will decrease the temperature, you have to avoid the formation of ice crystal. So, therefore, vitrification is the solidification of a superviscous liquid solution that remains supercooled during the transit through the crystalline phase and reach the glassy state when it is cooled below the glass transition temperature. The strategies to reduce the likelihood of lethal ice crystal formation during the transit are first, exposure to high concentration of cryoprotectant, but be careful of the toxicity, and also to cool fast, and first of all during the cooling, and also high speed of warming are also necessary. Therefore, the conventional equation to increase the probability to obtain a vitrified state is in relation with the cooling, warming speed, the concentration of cryoprotectant or the viscosity, and the volume. So the lower the cooling rate, the higher the required cryoprotectant concentration is, and vice versa. And this is an equation that we know since more than 40 years. No, the general step of the vitrification process and analysis of some steps that give rise to questions. So this is the basic step of vitrification procedure, the selection of the biological material. Then we have blastocysts with the collapsing process, then the exposure to the cryoprotectant solution, the cooling steps, the storage, the warming, and the selection after warming. And let's go first for the selection of the blastocysts before vitrification, because with the upward trends toward the freeze-all strategies, several questions arise. Is it time to reconsider our vitrification policy? Do we have to vitrify suboptimal blastocysts? in terms of morphology with atypical or atypical kinetic of development. That means embryo with delayed blastulation. So here we have different kinds of blastocysts, beautiful group of blastocysts, and we see blastocysts of poor quality. So the question, shall we cryopreserve only this one, or shall we destroy this one, or cryopreserve them? This is an important question. And the question is, well, which one to select, which one to discard? Because what is a good embryo finally? The one that looks nice, or the one that implants? And what we know from the literature is that the aneuploidy rate is in relation with the quality of the blastocyst. The clinical outcome of reduced quality of blastocysts are also in relation with the degree of expansion, the quality of the trophectoderm, and also the inner cell mass. And finally, some studies have showed that embryo with a delay of development, so slow developing embryo, they observed in some studies a high rate of aneuploidy. This was, but when we say, okay, we will analyze this, and we analyzed this several years ago, and we try to analyze the blastocyst from the same group of patients in two different ways. First of all, we analyzed the embryo according to the quality of the inner cell mass and the trophectoderm and the degree of expansion. And in second group, we analyzed the results according to embryo with delay of development. So first of all, according to the blastulation and the quality of the inner cell mass and trophectoderm, in terms of survival rate, we observed survival rate more than 90%. That means survival rate at least 4 hours post-warming. And according, you can see here this nice expanded blastocyst, here blastocyst with expansion 3-on-2 according to Gartner classification. And you can see that we observe no difference in terms of survival rate. No, the live birth rate after single embryo transfers. In the fresh group, this in gray, you can observe that we observed a live birth rate of around 30%, and then it decreased in the fresh group when the quality of the blastocyst decreased. But after vitrification of the blastocyst, that means patients that came from a second attempt or patients that came back after failure of implantation, we observed that with low quality of embryos, the rate of live birth rate was higher. That we observed. So now we have the group of suboptimal quality blastocysts. That means embryo that on day 5 are on good quality young blastocyst, bad quality early blastocyst, or embryo with still on day 5 morula stage or in compaction. So in general, when we obtain this on day 5, you have only this embryo in your hand. And during a long period, what we have done, but we can see it is quite old group of patients, we have done transfer, fresh embryo transfer of such blastocyst, top young blastocyst, live birth rate 25%, but when we had to handle early blastocyst, but non-top one, or morula, or compacted blastocyst, 246 transfer and 200 transfer, the live birth rate was only 6.63%. So we have said, what shall we do on that time? What to do? Cancel the transfer, start a new stimulation. So, and we say, why not to give more chance to the embryo and perform an additional culture period of 24 hours. And what we have observed, that this was the fresh group in pink, and after vitrification, you can see quite old patients, we could increase the live birth rate. In group of early blastocysts non-top, we obtain according to, I would say, if we vitrify before the culture or after the 24 culture, we obtain a live birth rate ranging between 16 and 28%, compared to 7% in the fresh. And importantly, for morula and compaction, we increase tenfold the result from 2.8 to 29, 22%. How can we explain this? If we transfer embryos with a delayed development in a fresh embryo transfer, when we transfer this embryo, directly the embryo probably will continue to develop, but what will happen when the window implantation will be open, there will be no cross-talking between the embryo and the endometrium. And so the embryo will start to degenerate and will not implant, because the cross-talking will start too late. But if we give to this embryo an additional 24-hour culture period, and that we vitrify it, so we will transfer this embryo in synchronized phase with the endometrium. And the embryo, the cross-talking will start directly when the implantation window will open. So to conclude this part, which blastocyst select? Do we have to vitrify only top? We can say we can vitrify moderate embryo, poor quality on day 5, embryo with delayed in development, but with an additional culture of 24 hours, so we can restore the synchronicity. What we don't vitrify at all, because we analyze these resources retrospectively, this blastocyst that we qualified CC. So the collapsing of the blastocyst, several people ask me if I still do collapsing, because already 20 years ago, we have shown for the first time that collapsing of expanded blastocyst was very important. We performed at that time with a needle, and Dr. Mukaida afterwards with a laser. But I would say that no, we don't do collapsing at all, because we have observed that all depends on the degree of dehydration. And the degree of dehydration that was done previously artificially with a needle of a laser, it is now performed using vitrifying solution with that contains sucrose, and solution that contain 0.75 molar sucrose, it is no need to collapse them, because the dehydration of the quality is strong enough. In case of sucrose 0.5, yes, we have to collapse the blastocyst. So let's go now for another topic. The topic is exposure to vitrifying solution, a crucial step for the oocytes. And in fact, when we start with vitrification directly of oocyte, there was a lot of information regarding the excellent result with frozen oocyte from young women to create oocyte banking. But after that, when when women wanted to preserve their oocyte, and women with advanced maternal age, the results were quite disappointing. And in fact, we can observe in a study of Laura Rienzi and Ubaldi that is fresh embryo transfer according to the age of the patient. And it is normal that less than 34 ongoing implantation rate 27%, and then it decreases according to the age due to the aneuploidy. But when we analyze the results after vitrification, for young women, there was no drop in the implantation rate, but when the age of the woman increased, there was a dramatic drop in the implantation. So this reflects the fragility of oocytes, which have to cope with non-physiological conditions. And in fact, it is normal. When you do a normal for the biologists, when they do a normal oocyte pickup, they have to work in strict control conditions, checking the temperature, control the pH, control the osmolarity. And then when we do vitrification, warming, and storage, we are far from the physiological condition, and it is normal that oocyte will be stressed during all this procedure. And the oocyte is a complex structure, low permeability to cryoprotectant, low surface to volume, precise arrangement of the chromosome, and high degree of specialization of the cytoplasm. In fact, we have in the oocyte the plasma membrane, and plasma membrane contain the aquaporine. Aquaporine are very important protein that regulate the osmotic flow. And the aquaporins are the main water of cryoprotectant transporters and play a crucial role in modulation of the osmotic permeability. And then we have also the metaphase plate, then all the organelles, and then the cytoskeleton, microtubule, and the microfilament. And all these are important. All the organelles and the cytoskeleton have to be preserved to start the fertilization process and start the first mitotic division. And you can see that all different organelles and microtubules are important for the resumption of meiosis, deconcentration of spermatozoa, and the PN formation. So it is very important not to stress too much the oocytes. And the oocyte, during the cryopreservation process, the oocyte is stressed during the exposure to the cryoprotectant solution. Because what happens? In general, the oocytes are exposed to mainly to two solutions, one non-vitrifying and one vitrifying. In the non-vitrifying, you can see already that the osmolarity is quite high, almost 3000, and then water escape, you have a contraction of the oocyte, and then you let cryoprotectant entering inside the cell. Okay. And after you place the oocyte in the final step of around 60 seconds, you place the oocyte in the vitrifying solution, but very high osmolarity, between 5,500 to more than 7,000 milliosmol. And in these steps, you observe an outflow of water, concentration of the cryoprotectant that enter during this step, and a strong collapsing. So the oocyte have to tolerate and to adapt to these non-physiological conditions. And we may induce chemical stress and also a mechanical stress. So what is no more affected? The metaphase plate or the cytoplasm? And it was a nice study of Morteza that showed that osmotic and thermal stress induce cytoplasmic insufficiencies. And this is the main cause for poor competence of vitrified oocyte. External stress, that means too pronounced dehydration, too faster shrinkage or swelling, and too high cryoprotectant concentration may compromise the intracellular spatial orientation, function, and distribution of the organelle and might disrupt the microtubular and microfilament network. So, for example, there are plenty of examples of stress, but one is I show you that aquaporins are very important to keep and maintain continuously the osmotic pressure balance in the oocyte. But in case of stress, what can happen? Chemical stress, that means deregulated of the phosphorylation process of the aquaporine synthesis that occur in the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Mechanical stress, we can disturb the viscoelasticity of the membrane and produce some webs outside the membrane. And then we can compromise the microfilament function. That means the aquaporine cannot go and enter inside the membrane because we disturb all what we call the trafficking of the protein. No suggestion to reduce the mechanical and chemical osmotic stress. This is, I will go fast because it can take time, but bon, we can perform oocyte activation after the warming because they've shown in Belgium, in Ghent, that the amplitude of oscillation is different between the fresh and the vitrified oocytes. Also, we can reduce the intracellular concentration. And bon, in fact, we use high concentration of cryoprotectant outside. But what was inside? And this was one question that we asked ourselves already 7 years ago. And we have shown that on mice, oocyte and zygote, that finally the intracellular concentration is quite low as compared to the external concentration. And from that time, we think and we say, oh, there is something behind this. And we have to revise. No, I will not go in details. And we just published a paper 1 month ago where we show that finally we have to make a huge difference between the extracellular part and the intracellular, what happened inside the cell. Outside with the solution, a glassy state, but inside we have to consider that the cytoplasm is a gel and a colloid. And we don't have to call this a glassy state, we have to call this an amorphous situation. So we can see the equation is totally different. We have to consider with the solution the concentration of cryoprotectant to obtain, to increase the probability of vitrification. But inside the cell, we have to combine the cryoprotectant and also the cell clothing. That depends on the dehydration step. Then after, it was very important to add the cryoprotectant in a small and controlled addition. What we do in general, we add like this, very huge change in volume. Maybe it is better to add the cryoprotectant in a soft way. We have performed a study last year when we analyzed 5-step addition of cryoprotectant versus 9-step, and we use this on germinal vesicle because it is very sensitive cells, and we observed in 5 steps compared to 9 steps that survival rate 61% in 5 steps versus 87% in 9 steps. So a soft addition is probably more useful to decrease the osmotic stress. Another initial redistribution of the cytoskeleton, we know from the animal model that we need to give an extra time to restore damage due to cryopreservation. I don't have the result, but what we do in our practice before we warm the oocyte and we wait 2 hours, but now what we do, we after the oocyte pickup, we try to vitrify quite faster the oocyte, at least 1 hour after the oocyte pickup. But after warming, we wait 3 to 4 hours, and we observed higher rate, a better, higher rate of blastocyst because we give more time for reorganization of the cytoplasm. The priority, first of all this suggestion to reduce the mechanical and chemical osmotic stress, the priority is for low quality oocyte, advanced maternal age, and low responder patient. So the conclusion for this part, the permeability of the plasma membrane for water in cryoprotectant is important for the tolerance of cell to osmotic stress. No control osmotic pressure induce lethal and mechanical stresses. This affects dramatically the aquaporine translocation, impairing the outflow and inflow mechanism of water and cryoprotectant. Smooth addition of cryoprotectant is one solution. Also, what is important, also removal of cryoprotectant after warming is to be done with precautions, because you have a membrane, you have to deal with a membrane that is already more weaker after the warming process. So now the cooling steps, also another debate, because, and now this debate I think is closed, because the COVID brings the solution. We have tangible reason for moving open to closed support for vitrification. Why? Because during a long time, there was all the time people advise all the time to vitrify in open system, in non-aseptic vitrification. But in closed system, you work in aseptic vitrification. And the potentiality of contamination is not totally proven in the human application. This is true. But are there data showing direct contamination with like nitrogen? Yes. Cross-contamination during storage? Yes, there are data. Toxic compounds in like nitrogen? Yes, there are toxic compounds. No contamination at all, there are no data. So the risk is not zero. So we have to take some precaution. Also, for us, the European Union advise that a cell must be packaged in a manner which minimizes the risk of contamination. So, with the time of COVID, no, and we know that the pandemic of COVID is a good reason to vitrify in closed system. even though that the manipulation of gamete and embryo requires numerous deletion and passages. That means the reduction of the viral load. But still, we have to be very precautious and not to say later on, better safe than sorry. So we use for this closed device, there are other options, use of sterile liquid nitrogen by filtration on the UV, storage in the vapor, and storage in device that produce clean air liquid. The second reason for the debate, open versus closed, and this was the main reason, was that cooling rate more than 20,000 degrees per minute in the open system versus 2,000 degrees Celsius per minute. So a lot of people say, oh yes, you go too slowly, it is not possible to vitrify, because the dogma was impossible to maintain a vitrified state in reduced cooling condition. As I showed you previously, when you have to cross this transit phase of crystalline phase, if you go too slowly, maybe you can induce crystallization inside the cell, and this was the dogma. But if we have crystallization inside, we have a high rate of cell lysis then. What we observed, if the cell lysis is a high rate of cell lysis, then it is impossible to obtain survival rate of more than 80%, because most of the case they will be degenerated. Or no, the literature support that that with closed carrier support, the literature no show similar survival rate for oocyte, 85 to 95%. No difference in terms of pregnancy versus open system. No difference in epigenetic markers, and no neonatal problem. Okay, this is blastocyst obtained after vitrification of oocyte in closed system. Blastocyst vitrification in closed carrier, also survival rate more than 90%, and no difference in terms of pregnancy versus fresh embryo transfer. Also, excellent results after trophectoderm biopsy. Also, you can see according to the quality of the blastocyst before, even after vitrifying the blastocyst, survival rate of almost 90%. The warming, important of warming, and there was nice study of the team of Mazur that showed that even though you cool very, very at low temperature of 37 degrees, you can see but if the warming rate is more than 3000, that means you can obtain quite higher survival rate, almost similar to cooling achieved more cooling of more than 1800 degrees Celsius. That means the importance of cooling is also mandatory in order to avoid devitrification during the transit between TG and TM. So the primary cause of injury or cell death in a vitrification procedure is high recrystallization during warming and not failure to vitrify during the cooling process. Vitrification of oocytes, yes, selection of warm blast, yes, this was vitrification of oocyte and embryo. Using aseptic vitrification, that means closed system, is effective for oocyte and embryo at all stages of development, effective for post-biopsy blastocyst. We can increase the cumulative pregnancy rate, I didn't show this here, can apply it in all freeze program, and must be required for long-term storage for embryo banking and no in COVID situation. This is obligatory. So the last part is selection of blastocyst immediately after the warming and dilution in sucrose or trialose solution, and also before the embryo transfer, a second check, 3-4 hours to 24 hours post-warming. And what is very important is the degree of re-expansion first. If you have embryo that re-expands very well, your chance to be pregnancy is quite higher. The final message is conclusion, regarding the morphology, to vitrify low quality embryo morphology and delay development, yes. Regarding collapsing, to vitrify expand blastocyst with collapsing, yes. Importance of the dehydration with the vitrified solution. That means according to the percentage of sucrose, the molarity of sucrose. Osmotic stress, wait longer before ICSI, yes, to restore at least partially the cytoplasm integrity. Soft addition of cryoprotectant, yes. Close carrier device, for blastocyst, yes. For oocyte, yes. There are nice also literature. This is the atlas that we published 2-3 years ago, showing different stages of blastocyst. And now, thank you for your attention. Thank you.